Hello, everyone. My name is Father Ted Trinko. I'm a contemplative priest of the Institute of the Incarnate Word, serving in Emmitsburg, Maryland, of the United States. Today is November 8th, 2024. It's the Friday of the 31st week in Ordinary Time. Our gospel today is from the Gospel of Luke, chapter 16, verses 1 to 8. Jesus said to his disciples, "A rich man had a steward who was reported to him for squandering his property. He summoned him and said, 'What is this I hear about you? Prepare a full account of your stewardship, because you can no longer be my steward.' The steward said to himself, 'What shall I do, now that my master is taking the position of steward away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I know what I shall do, so that when I am removed from the stewardship, they may welcome me into their homes.' He called in his master's debtors one by one. To the first he said, 'How much do you owe my master?' He replied, 100 measures of oil.' He said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Sit down and quickly write one for 50. Then to another he said, 'And you, how much do you owe?' He replied, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, 'Here is your promissory note. Write one for 80. And the master commended that dishonest servant for acting prudently. For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than the children of light.'" Our gospel today contains one of the most confusing parables of our Lord. It's typically called the parable of the dishonest steward. This steward has been swindling his boss, but finally got caught. When he's told that he will be fired, he decides he needs to get in the good graces of some other people so that they will give him place to stay when his current boss turns him out. This favor he extends to some of his boss's debtors consists in cooking the books, that is to say, changing the records, so that they don't have to pay back what they had borrowed. It's a win-win for the steward and the debtor, but the master is getting ripped off. But here, in a surprise twist, the dishonest steward is held up as an example. And the master commended that dishonest steward for acting prudently. Jesus seems to applaud the cheating servant when he says, "For the children of this world are more prudent in dealing with their own generation than are the children of light." The apparent praise of trickery and deceit is what makes this parable one of the hardest to understand. A prominent biblical commentary remarks, "The parable of the dishonest manager has always been puzzling. So much so that St. Augustine said, 'I can't believe this parable came from the lips of our Lord.'" With it being impossible that our Lord is recommending theft, it must be asked, what is the point? What is the lesson of the parable? To answer that, we can say that in a word, Jesus is telling us to have the same kind of foresight as the dishonest manager did. The master's approval bears on the prudence of the manager, who realized how best to use whatever he could to ensure his future security. The dishonest manager thus becomes a model for Christian disciples, not because of his dishonesty, the means he used, but because of his prudence. He looked ahead. Faced with a life and death situation, he judged prudently how to cope with it. Christian disciples are also faced with life and death situations in that we will die one day, and so ought to use all that we have to prepare for that moment. You can put it in this way. If the dishonest steward of the master, when he is asked to give an account, is prudent enough to plan his earthly future so as to receive a welcome in people's homes, how much more ought the faithful and prudent steward of the Lord, who will have to give an account to God, prudently plan for a heavenly future so as to be welcomed into eternal dwellings? The parable thus instructs disciples to take initiative and plan wisely so as to enter God's kingdom. Many people are good at preparing for future things in this world like the clever steward. Business owners, for example, usually plan purchases and products years in advance. To get into a prestigious college, a student might hire tutors, take certain classes, go to a particular school, high school, and engage in extracurricular activities that will look good on applications. Or if some young athlete sets out with a desire to compete professionally, they will structure their lives so as to increase their physical prowess. This is the kind of prudent planning we want to implement for the sake of holiness. We ought to be devious in devising our salvation. Like Saint Jose Maria Escrivá said, what zeal people put into their earthly affairs, dreaming of honors, striving for riches, bent on sensuality. Men and women, rich and poor, old and middle-aged and young and even children, all of them alike. When you and I, Saint Jose Maria Escrivá, put the same zeal into the affairs of our souls, we will have a living and working faith, and there will be no obstacle that we cannot overcome in our apostolic works. So what are some of the things we can consider with foresight that will help us to get closer to God? So how can we be like the prudent, dishonest manager in the spiritual life? Among the many things that we could talk about, I just want to say one. The plan of life. Sanctity is not improvised. Anybody who wants to achieve something in life, whether it be in the human order or in the supernatural one, should sit down and look ahead, think about it, and make a plan. To sanctify ourselves, we should take advantage of our time by following a schedule and having a rule of life. Because if you don't have this plan of life, much time is going to be wasted in many different ways. We're not going to be sure as to what to do. We're going to neglect some things that we ought to do, but just weren't able to because we didn't plan ahead. And because of our neglect and our lack of a structure and a lack of plan, we're going to let things slide. We're not going to follow through on commitments. But if you do make a plan of life, if you have sort of a wake-up time, if you have a prayer time, if you have a virtue you're working on, if you have a spiritual book that you're trying to, finish, if you have this structure to one's spiritual life, not rigid, not, mechanical, not robotic, not artificial, but yes, some basic plans and resolutions. If you have this plan of life, there's going to be many benefits. There's going to be order. We're going to save time. We're not going to be so whimsical in deciding what to do. We're going to supernaturalize our works as well. And it also has this great educational value where we can practice obedience to the rule. It can make us more consistent, disciplined, austere. And so if you don't yet have a kind of plan of life, a plan especially regarding spiritual practices, it'd be good to talk to a priest about that, good to talk to a spiritual director about that, good to sit down and start thinking about what is the best way for me to utilize my time? What are those things that should be part of my life? When am I going to do it? Where am I going to do it? So that we can begin to reap some of the benefits of that foresight, which our Lord recommends to us in today's gospel. May the Blessed Virgin Mary enlighten us and encourage us to use any and all means to prepare for that account that we'll have to render one day.
Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed hearing the gospel and homily, I invite you to share it with someone you know who may also find it rewarding, and also to subscribe to the Catholic Voice channel. Please see in the description below if you would like to receive a text message for each daily gospel and homily. Please also keep our missionary priests throughout the world in your prayers. Thank you, and God bless.